Welcome to the latest Video Games Club from BGU. My name's Paul James. We're joined today by Jay Parnas and Damo Camilleri. And Jay, I'm going to pass this one on to you because it was your game this month.
Yeah, so the game I chose for this month for the guys is none other than Jet Set Radio, originally for the Dreamcast. None of us have a Dreamcast, so we played the HD remake. I personally played it on Steam. I've got it on the 360, but I had easiest access to Steam because I have a new console now, and that takes up most of my HDMI spot. So I actually wrote down a few questions, so if I'm glancing at my phone, I'm not being rude. That's purely because I don't have a great memory. So the first one I wanted to ask, I wanted to jump straight to it. Did the game grab you guys? Were you wanting to play more of it?
You want to go first?
Yeah, alright, I'll go first. Yeah, it did. It frustrated me terribly at the beginning. I didn't play the remake. I had this on Steam. I had just Jet Set Radio.
That is the remake. So the original was on the Dreamcast. So they did. But when I say HD remake, I mean basically they upped the graphics.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the other one.
No. We'll get to that later.
Remastering.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, remastering. Sorry, that's probably a better word. Yeah.
Yeah. So, even though I found it very frustrating at the beginning, I was just like, oh my god. I don't know, maybe I wasn't paying attention, but in the first tutorial, you have to jump to the car. I was like, okay. So I just started, skating around. I didn't know what to do.
Was that the one we got to skitch behind the car?
Yeah. I was like,
Occasionally the tutorials were a little unclear, but...
Yeah, that one was, look, that, I suppose, was... But I mean, again,
it's an isolated example. That one.
Yeah, no, it is.
Yeah.
That's in that game. That is useless. Never sketch ever, because you don't need to.
Yeah.
There aren't even that many cars in the game. That's one of the few areas where there are cars. But again, for when it was made, this is made turn of the century. So.
Oh yeah, I remember
really...
playing a Dreamcast, man.
I
saved up all my coins and I hired one for 2 days.
Oh, right.
Crazy taxi, but
yeah.
Shenmue.
Pardon?
No, you wouldn't. No one plays Shenmue, unfortunately.
No.
Alright. Anyway, yeah, but even though it kind of frustrated me in the beginning, I was just I want to give up on this. I want to keep playing it. And it wasn't because of the review. It was just I want to explore more of this game. I want to see what it has. And it was just the music was pushing you forward to. You kind of sit there yeah, you got to go into it, and it did grip me. I thought it was a compelling game.
And you?
Well, I played it on the Xbox.
Yeah. Well, the remastering, as you said, it's the same. It is identical from Steam.
From a visual perspective, it's the same thing.
Yeah,
so that was neither here nor there. I'd be curious to see how it originally looked on Dreamcast, but
very similar.
From a visual stance, I mean, it had its own kind of unique art style, so it meant that a bit like when people when they make comparisons with, say, Wind Wakers and those sorts of games, because of their distinct art style, it meant that it kind of stands the test of time a little bit better than some of those that go for a realistic look.
Yeah, and I was even saying before, I'm one of those people that I basically think that all video games that use cell shading have a lot to thank Jet Set Radio for, purely because it was not only it was untested in games at all. It was not a thing that anyone had done before. It wasn't just no one had made a game. No one had used that in game design as even testing and stuff before.
Yeah.
And they were just we want something that's going to exemplify the style and everything that we want, and realism is not how it's going to work, because that's what everyone was doing at that time.
I can't imagine playing the same game with that realistic sort of art style.
I mean, you go back and you play Tony Hawk 1, and that looks like garbage. The character has 5 polygons for his face.
Yeah.
And
and to be fair, look, that's a sign. That was tech at the time.
Yeah, it was.
Fine,
but I mean, you can go back and you can look at Jet Set Radio now, and you can be like, look, this does not look like, Super Mario Square. Not you don't see any of that. It looks quite smooth and quite polished.
But look, I quite enjoyed it. For me, I guess having not played it on the Dreamcast or even prior to this Video Games Club, I could see how it had influenced some of the games that I've played since in terms of the likes of Infamous, Sunset Overdrive, and a few others along the way. But you could see how this game had influenced it, and how, despite being a little bit older, you could see those mechanics maturing and into what we now get to enjoy.
Yeah, part of the reason I was into Sunset Overdrive as much as I was because it emulated, well, not emulated, but it basically it heralded to that sort of Jet Set Radio feel, which for me, I was a big fan of Jet Set Radio for a long time, and I'll talk about sort of how I came in contact with it a little bit later. But yeah, like for me, that was part of the big deal, because I'm like, the traversal in Jet Set Radio, especially for its time, is so fluid. Whereas like there's a lot of games, even other sports games like Tony Hawk and sort of other games like that, they never really felt quite so smooth.
It wasn't as precise.
Yeah, because obviously it was a game, like they were aiming for a game of skill, where it's like, okay, you've got to do the thing and also land the thing. Whereas Jet Set Radio is like, hey, just
you're gonna land.
Yeah, there are like grindy looking things that you can get from anywhere from here to all the way over there. Just, you know, make your way there and have some fun. So the next thing that I wanted to ask you guys, and you've both sort of touched on already, is do you think that the visuals stand up? Like HD aside, obviously they've been touched up a little bit. Do you think that they stand the test of time? Because remember, this is about a 15-year-old story now.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I mean, I am a man of nostalgia. Like, I love old stuff. Like, I mean, I think they should remove CGI and bring back the old claymation in movies. I think that would be aggressive. Yeah. But no. In all seriousness, no, it did. Like, I mean, look at the environment and everything like that. Like, the cars, it was like almost like it was basic, but it still holds up to, like, you know, shit that you see today in like newer games. Like, I don't know, when was the last Simpsons game that came out? Like, and I know that's an animated game, but like, this was from all the way back then, and today we're still getting almost similar graphics in animated games.
Yeah, I think I kind of touched on it before and how it holds up as a result there, but it is just because of that art style, it will stand the test of time because of kind of the stylistic decisions that they've made versus how many polygons I can pump onto a screen.
Yeah, and look, it is definitely a unique aesthetic. Do you think it suits the game?
Yeah, and its themes, and like it allows them to go with a really diverse, broad colour palette that perhaps if they'd gone for a realistic tone, they couldn't have achieved as well. So,
yeah,
no, I think it's allowed them to branch out and just be as creative as they can.
Yeah, like, so there are some of the characters in the game who have blonde hair, for example. And this is one that stands out for me personally. And they look like they have blonde hair. Whereas in something like, you know, a more realistic game at the time, their hair looked like hay. Like bad hay.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
And it was always that colour. It was always that, like, muddy, like, sand, like,
because they've
wet
tried
sand.
to go for detail, but it just doesn't.
Exactly. And that's the thing. Whereas with this, because they were flat colours, they really worked. Sorry, I gotta unlock my phone so I can read some more of these questions to you guys. Oh yes, so the game's style in terms of like the character design. So it's trying to, and if you guys had to watch the documentary on it, it goes into basically they were trying to tap into the 90s Japanese street fashion culture.
Yeah.
And I personally think it's like all of the designs of the characters are like crazy and wild and look awesome. What did you guys think?
Yeah, man. Yeah, like I loved it. Like I remember, like not too long ago, that article on Vice came up, and I was like, "Hey Jay, give this a read." And like you just pointed that out, like straight away. You were like, "He missed this. Like he missed the key element of that game." And it was true. Like now that I've played it, you're looking at it, it's like that's awesome. Like seeing this, like I don't know, they're so cool. Like it's something that you want to be. Like if I had that much style. Fuck yeah, I'd do that kind of shit. And it kind of like, I can actually, now that we're talking about how has reflected upon things over time, there was an old manga series called Air Gear, which was about rollerblades and things like that. And the majority of them Like, I can now see, like, even the teams and things like that must have just looked back at Jet Set and gone, yeah, man, that's where it was at. Let's do this shit again.
And this is something I'd recommend to anyone sort of watching or listening. If you just want to do a simple Google search for Japanese street fashion, like even now, the same sort of stuff's still going on. Like even more crazy, you know, like chicks with like teddy bear skirts, like skirts made of like teddy bears, that they've like sort of opened up and all sorts of crazy business like that. And you know, like eye patches and you know, punk hair and just cool stuff like that. Like, what was your take on it?
Well, for me, that stuff's it's not usually up my alley, but I could appreciate what they were going for, and they certainly executed on that design choice. Like I said, it's not for me, and it's not going to be for everyone, but they did a good job of what they were going for. And
yeah, absolutely.
I think that's all you can ask for, really.
And I think it reflected really well, too, upon, like, you see your characters and the other characters, like, you know, Tank. And, but the dog, not the dog, the cop. The copper is like that generic, you know, trench coat and everything like that. So it's like,
grizzled.
Yeah, that real polar opposite of everything that you're kind of standing up for. Like, you know, and it's like, that really helped, like, you know, define the characters, you know, antagonists and protagonists kind of.
In that documentary, as they're sort of talking, they're actually talking over, for a lot of it, they're talking over a lot of concept art for it.
Yeah.
And obviously, because this game was sort of rated E for everyone or whatever the, you know, the equivalent was, yeah. In fact, it might have been at the time. I think we used to have a system like that.
Yeah, we did, because we just took their rating and then we created our own system.
Yeah.
Which is rubbish.
Yeah. But we won't get into that. The circumstance is that like he was more grizzled. He was like, you know, 5 o'clock shadow and like slicked up hair and like cigar and like big Magnum and like he was basically like a Dirty Harry type dude who would just he would run into the streets and he would shoot rollerblading graffiti artists. Like that's pretty much what his character was. And like again, it's got that sort of style where it's like, yeah, I mean, it's kind of a cliche, but, you know, if not us, who else? Like, and that's the thing, like, you look at that, and when you're doing a realistic game, and you're making a realistic game, sort of tapping into those cliches is a lot harder because it comes off camp. Whereas if you're already in that sort of style, you can get away with it because it looks cool, because it fits in.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you guys, one of my favourite parts of Jet Set Radio is the soundtrack. What did you guys think of the music? I know it's not really up your alley.
Again, a bit like kind of the Japanese cultural sort of things they're going for there. It's not right up my alley, but I wasn't cringing at it either. Again, in much the same way that I spoke about before, like I take it or leave it. It wasn't intruding on the experience, but nor was it blowing me away in any great way, but I'm okay with it. Like,
to be fair, if I said, "Cool, you're going to have a long car ride now, and I'm going to play nothing but like pop music, like bubblegum pop music," yeah, you would be like, "Cool, can I run this car into a tree now?" It's the same music, but because of the way that it's done, and again,
yeah, and I think that's the thing because it all still fits with what they're going for. It's
like
not as cringeworthy as if they were to go with that sort of music in a realistic.
Or in any sense. Like, I would argue that even though it is, like, for some of it, it's bubblegum J-pop, and that's fine, but, yeah, like, a lot of it is. Like, again, in that, I keep referencing that documentary, there's one part where they talk to one of the main music artists, and he was just like, I was taking, like, English voice samples and just, like, I was laughing, like, late at night when I was making these songs because I was just taking voice samples that made no sense, and I was just putting them in songs. Like that was how he was making it. He was just making it to sound cool. It wasn't supposed to, you know, mean anything or say anything or do anything. It was just supposed to be what it was.
Yeah.
And again, like if you were to take that music outside of the game, it's actually like it's still, like you said, not cringeworthy.
Yeah.
But a lot of music of its kind can very easily grate on the nerves. So I would argue that that's, you know, into its strength as well. Is that fair?
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that.
I enjoyed the music. Like,
yeah,
I mean, I'm a fan of anime and stuff like that. And to me, it felt almost like Initial D. Like, you get those really cool soundtracks coming through, and you're just
Yeah.
like, yes, you want to push on, you want to do stuff. I mean, seriously, I wanted to strap on some rollerblades and play that shit and go, around town. But,
Grind some rails.
yeah. Maybe just get down my driveway first.
Yeah. Maybe not getting to the tagging street corners part, but, So, I actually today brought in, before we recorded, I brought in my copy of Jet Set Radio Future for the original Xbox, which is the reason I brought it to you guys, and it's relevant, is because they explicitly went for a retelling and a remaking of the first game rather than actually making a sequel or anything like that. So obviously they had obviously better graphical power that they could push with, and they had better, this and better that, because the Xbox was it one stage better or one generation later?
Oh yeah, than the Dreamcast. Yeah.
So they had a lot more to play with, and I just wanted to know what you guys sort of thought of that in comparison, and how that sort of stands up compared to the original game, and whether you think it's faithful to the original game, and whether you think that's required. Because obviously it does have different gameplay. It plays differently. The levels are bigger and more vertical, and there's just a lot of differences between the two. What would you guys say in terms of how the two sort of stand next to each other?
Well, yeah, based on what I played there, I believe it's still quite faithful to the original game. There was lots of things that I recognised straight away, and yes, it's become a little bit more vertical, but that didn't hurt the experience at all. I felt like some of the gameplay functions, so we were talking about like the tagging and whatnot before, that the fact that was just mapped to a single button, to me was great. I'm someone who's played a lot of games with a lot of quick time events in them. So for me, when I played the original version, or the remastered version of the game, for me it was almost a little cringeworthy, because I've done them to death, quick time events. But so I was really appreciative of the fact that they've mapped it to just a single button click as you go flying by, and there's pros and cons to that, but I would take that hands down over the original version of it.
The stop and
stop
control
and
stick and
let's do button prompts or stick movements or whatever's necessary.
Yeah.
I'm still quite happy with what they've delivered there. It was look, I'm basing it on a half hour.
Yeah, it was very brief. It was very brief. Obviously the main,
but it was enough to get an idea of what differences they went for, what improvements they'd made, what changes they'd made, and yeah, I think it's great.
Yeah, I'll give you that. It didn't seem like I was playing a completely different game.
Did it feel more accessible?
Yeah. I mean, I found it
That was
a
what
little
I
more
felt.
smoother. Trying to play it on Steam, the second level you get into, as I was saying, you're in a half pipe, and there's little tags that you have to spray or trying to get anything, and I just couldn't get the speed or momentum to get there, and that frustrated me, because I'm still it was very basic to the game, and
you should note that those ones were optional. The green tags are optional. If you check the map, they're not actually.
Now that's one thing you mentioned the map before. I horribly underutilised the map.
Yeah, no, the map in Jet Set Radio, they probably don't, they should have taken out the skitching tutorial, add that out of the game completely, and talked about the map.
Lines on the
Because,
map.
because for racing, to try and find, the corner to take and, shortcuts and things to try and snag, it's fantastic. And even better for the tagging missions, it'll show you where they are, where all of them are, and where they are that are left. So if you got one or two left in the stage, sometimes trying to roll around and trying to find them in a decent time, because all the levels are timed, of course. Trying to find them is actually quite tough sometimes, because they're high up and you've got to grind past them on a rail or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And you just look at the map and it's just got a little arrow pointing to it. It's hi, I'm over here.
Yeah.
Come get me.
But I did find that the jumping from one rail to the next, across some form of a distance in this one, it felt different. I probably have to get used to it a bit more. But you kind of went
in the future or in
in the future.
It was definitely more
I used
floaty.
the phrase floaty, and
Yeah.
speaking as someone who's played a lot of Little Big Planet and knows floaty pretty well.
Yeah.
Even that was still a big change for me. Having played the original version not days beforehand, and then to change it and really have to rethink the way I was approaching the
Yeah,
level of
your
momentum
whole-
I came at it with. What
See,
I was
the
actually
funny
aiming
part
for.
is it's not actually.
It's just an adjustment though.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. Like, it's not even that it's actually floaty. If you actually play them both like directly one after another, you'll find that your character has very similar movement through the air. It's actually because you can just jump higher that it feels more floaty. So in the first game, your jump is very, very low because you're supposed to be making longer jumps rather than
higher jumps.
bigger. Yeah, but because again, obviously the new game Future has more verticality, they want you to be making high jumps as well as long jumps.
Yeah.
So, and because the areas they're just straight up bigger.
Yeah, no, that's definite. I mean, like, yeah, from what I played, it was pretty enjoyable. Like, I wasn't getting hit by cars left, right, and centre. The amount of people,
which is
was
what
cool.
I did regularly.
Yeah, you were a traffic hazard in Jet Set Radio Future.
Tell the kids to go out and play in the traffic.
Yeah.
That's me.
Yep, that was yes. You
But
were
you know, like
more or less traffic paint. You lie on the ground.
more graphical power. You know, more little things you can add, like the amount of people that are in there, the birds and things like that. Like, that's all cool little features. But I mean, like, it's just like, you know, the exact same game with just a bit more juice to it, which was really cool.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. But again, it's based on a half-hour sort of sampling,
Yeah,
so it's hard to get a full picture.
There are
You've
a
got
couple
better
of
idea, obviously.
yes,
so.
there are a couple of levels later on in that game that are probably a lot more frustrating. I would say
as a result of some of the changes.
Yes,
or the
yes.
additions.
So there's one level where, if you remember, you know they're called Poison Jam, the Monster Mask guys. So their area in Jet Set Radio Future has this huge sort of weird area where houses are literally stacked on top of each other, and there's a lot of long grinds where you have to sort of jump to a couple of rails, and there'll be like a graffiti section that you've got to spray, and obviously you've got to hold the right trigger. But if you catch onto it just too late and you miss one, getting back to start that grind again to try and do it again, because obviously you'll drop off the end and you'll be like down at a different area of the level. Getting back there can be quite a nightmare, and it's just one of those circumstances where, because it was smaller and less vertical in the first game, it was more fun to roll around.
Yep.
But in this one, because of the way that everything's set up, and obviously the bigger spray paints are always on foot because you need to stop and do the motions and so on and so forth. So it's really just you press the button once at the right time. So, some of those that you didn't see. Probably for the best.
Do you think then, having played both and played both comprehensively, do you think the changes for Future were for the best full stop? Like, would you, if you were given the choice to recommend one version or the other, which would you recommend?
Well, obviously for the same purpose that I didn't recommend Future, which is probably easily, or at least easy accessible for both of you guys because you both got Xboxes and I could very easily lend you the copy. I would still say the first game, because I think it has a bit more spirit, I suppose. It's a bit more out there than Future. Future's a bit more. A lot of its aspects have been made a bit more mainstream.
Yeah.
Possibly to appeal with the market because it was a release game for the Xbox, the original Xbox. So that's trying to get people to jump on board.
All those people that are buying Halo 1 go out and buy Jet Set as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right. And obviously you're not going to get many of those people. But I mean, my copy comes together with Sega Rally.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like both of those together was like a release title for the original Xbox. And I would say probably because of that, a lot of it has been, I'm not going to say dumbed down because that's probably unfair, but I do feel that some of the elements, I personally think that it loses something without having the movement because you don't really sort of get that same sort of immersion, I guess. You don't feel like you're stopping to put up a tag. Do you know what I mean? You're not. You're rollerblading by. I mean, it's
easy enough that you move your hand a couple times and you're spraying these really elegant designs.
Yeah.
But just skating straight past something is probably just a bit. It's a bit silly at that point. It gets to the point where it's just. Why is this even a part of the game anymore? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, isn't it? As you said, that immersion. I know Paul wasn't a huge fan of the QuickTime events because he's done plenty of them,
I mean, I kind of really enjoyed the whole, you sit down and then he does like the cool moves too, as he does like the spray, man, like
the flourishes. Yeah.
It's like, yeah, that's really cool. Like,
and that's the thing, like the dancing, I guess. Like there's like a lot of the characters when you choose the characters and so on and so forth. They have a bit of like breakdancing about them. Like there's a bit of that style as well.
Yeah.
And it's got it's that same sort of flourish. Like I don't think I will ever see someone actually breakdance on rollerblades. Like rollerblades that like if you actually look at them in game, they're 2-wheeled rollerblades. They've got just 2 big fuck off wheels. They don't have a set of 4 like proper inline skates because I don't know, maybe because you can grind like Sonic. I don't know. It's a Sega game, I guess. If you remember, they actually put out Sonic shoes where you could grind down stuff through the middle of your shoe.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was a conscious decision or whatever the case may be. But again, like breakdancing on rollerblades, probably not a thing that you're going to do.
No, definitely not.
And having those same sort of flourishes, I agree. I like it. I feel like it also kept in that style.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
So I said before I was going to talk about how I actually got introduced to the game, because it's not exactly a common game. I mean, the Dreamcast wasn't exactly a very common... it wasn't a common item at the time for people to come across, especially here in Australia, because I recall the markup being quite large when I was a child. Obviously, look, money when you're a child is a huge thing.
Oh, yeah.
But I remember it being extraordinarily exorbitant. And it didn't last here long at all.
No.
In the US, it lasted a lot longer. Here, it was.
Yeah. That was. Yeah, we're going to the downfall of.
Well, not even that. It's just like it was there and then it wasn't. So coming across Jet Set Radio naturally, for me at least personally, was not really a thing that we were able to do. But so for me, I actually came across it with a Game Boy Advance port. That was made by, I think it was Vicarious Visions, who also did the Tony Hawk games at the time. And through that, because the music was, they took some of the really famous sort of songs, I suppose, famous for the game anyway.
Yeah.
Songs from the original, like, Let Mum Sleep and Sneak Man and ones like that. And they took basically the main rhythm and they put it into like Game Boy Advance style MIDI backgrounds.
Yeah.
And, like, the sound effects of the Game Boy Advance were never great, but it still managed to capture a lot of the same circumstances that the songs sort of, like the same, not circumstances, the same sort of feeling that the songs gave you.
Yeah.
And the levels had similar look, like, obviously they had that sort of weird, when you're behind a wall, you're sort of weirdly pixelated and so on and so forth, as the Game Boy Advance could only do at that time.
Yeah.
But from
that, when I finally bought my my Xbox 360, after the game that made me buy that, which was Burnout Paradise, my first purchase for that was jumping onto eBay and buying myself a copy of Jet Set Radio Future, because it was backwards compatible at the time.
Yeah.
And then obviously when it was released a few years ago now onto the Xbox Live Arcade, I launched myself at it. Like, I own a copy on the 360 and on Steam, because I love that series so much.
Give them as much support as you can.
Absolutely, and look, Smilebit, who's the developer of that game, and they've sort of been rebranded and removed around in somewhere inside Sega doing some such thing, but
Bad Sonic games.
No, not even. I don't even think they get that kind of prime time.
Sonic at the Olympics.
Yes, that's right. You're right. They do get Sonic games.
Bad Sonic game.
Yeah, fair enough. So look, the question that I wanted to sort of, not necessarily finish off, because if you guys want to say some stuff, that's up to you. But the question I really wanted to sort of, and I wrote it, so I'm going to read it verbatim, because I was in the zone at the time. So, do you think that in today's market, that a franchise such as Jet Set Radio would succeed with a new installment? But furthermore, do you think it deserves one? And by that, I don't mean did you like it enough to want to see another one? Do you think that there's more that could be done with this particular franchise and this property?
To answer the second question, yes, it probably both deserves and needs another one. Like, I think there's enough room to do more there. On the flip side, though, no, it will not be successful at all. And I think that's not because of the quality of the game. That's because of the market as it is. It's been Microsoft and Insomniac have been quite clear that despite, well, Sunset Overdrive being a fantastic game and I think netting a million sales or thereabouts, I think it's just short of that. It's not been successful for them financially, and in terms of development these days, it's just too big a risk for many of these publishers to take on a game that they don't expect to sell all that well. It's a shame that that's a reality of the industry these days, but it's, yeah, in my opinion, it's probably unlikely that we'll see it anymore.
But do you think that the Xbox One or even the PS4 would be the platform for it?
Well, no, not necessarily. There's obviously heaps more platforms they could go to as well. They could go, and even the way that they get it into play could be via a Kickstarter or similar sorts of programs. So there is a market for it. It would depend on how they want to develop it, how they want to finance it, that would determine whether it's a possibility.
My personal opinion, and obviously you can take a swing at this straight after, but my personal opinion is that I think it would definitely find a very strong home on either on a Steam or even probably more on a Nintendo console, because I feel that the sort of bright vibrancy, it fits in with a lot of the first party titles there, and I think that there's a lot that they could do. Obviously Nintendo and Sega, you said Mario and Sonic, they've definitely got some sort of crossovers.
Yeah.
I think that's an area where they could definitely make it actually succeed. I mean, if you look at even games like that, they're taking risks on, like Splatoon, which is, that's very new, and it's a very bright, it's a very colourful game. But I mean, when it comes to it mechanically, there's not a whole lot there, but that doesn't mean it's a bad game.
No, it's a fantastic game, and I actually, in terms of like the Sega factor, they picked up and finished, or helped Platinum finish Bayonetta.
Yeah,
something that Sega used to hold known. So, look, there's a chance because of the relationship they have that's possible. I don't see why it's not possible to get it on the PS4 and the Xbox One, but it would be a matter of how they finance it. So if it is that kind of Kickstarter,
so it's not so much
they get enough fan support to get it over the line, and then they might have stretch goals, or maybe
so it's not so much that the market isn't there to make it financially viable. It's that the development would be difficult financially viable.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you think it? Do you think?
I think there's enough fans out there for games of that type.
Do you think it would
money
sell?
For it? It's just not extraordinarily well, but it'd sell enough for them to make their money back, and for everyone involved to be happy, for fans to be happy, and I think that's at the end of the day all that matters.
What about you? Do you think?
All right. I've been hanging for this.
Okay.
All right. I reckon it would succeed amazingly well. I think that in recent times, games like this have let us down way too much. What was it? The new Tony Hawk's, which is not holding up to the original. And then they made the remake of the original, and it was like, what have you done? You've taken away some of the best elements of the game and replaced it with, like, the beauty of a game like this is there's no need for the realism. You could just go with the whole crazy anime effect, if you would put it. Like, you could end up going, all right, now we've got all this extra room to do things and stuff like that. We'll give you custom rollerblades, and we're going to allow you to, download images. Like you say, it was a Steam game. You could port in images as mods to do graffiti tags and things like that.
You could do that with the Dreamcast.
That's awesome.
Yeah, you could connect it through the broadband adapter with the modem, and you could download images and have them as your custom tags.
I forgot how many consoles actually went internet before internet.
Yeah, and that's available on the Steam version now. I believe you can even port in images.
Yeah.
To the original game. It's all there. You can draw them. You can get your pixel art on, and you can draw your own custom tags.
Yeah.
In the original game, that's a thing that would.
You go to a Comic-Con or something like that, you watch the big games that get played, most of them have the anime-styled graphics. They're the massive ones getting played.
You mean cel shading, or?
Yeah, definitely.
Well, events like that, the publishers and developers know their target audience at those sorts of places anyway, so they're appealing to them a little bit by doing that.
Oh, yeah, I know, but we're talking
ones that are run by, average Joes. I'm not talking like huge Comic Cons. Like, I mean, because let's be honest,
right.
Melbourne hasn't got them. Like, we've got Comic Con, but it's nothing fantastic. But we're going off tangent. I think the game could really do really well, and I think it does deserve one because, I mean, I want one. I really...
You and me both.
As I
really
wanted
want-
it should happen.
I want a game that, has a cool soundtrack. And I mean, especially in today, because, I mean, after...
And different, like cool and different.
Yeah.
Like there's cool, like you said, Tony Hawk always had a cool soundtrack. Burnout had a good soundtrack.
Yeah.
Old Need for Speeds like Underground 1 and 2, they always had great sound. Yeah. Like, there are great soundtracks, but then there's this which is cool and super different.
Yeah, like, I mean, you look at it, after Gangnam Style came here, like, people started actually looking into K-pop. SBS now has, like, a whole, like, just dedicated thing of just, Eastern music. And it's like, well, it's definitely there, that whole combination of multicultures is coming into play. And it's like, I think that something like this would be great. And it's like, the whole tagging system would still also be amazing. Racing, things like that. Like, there's countless things they could do. Add, like, a online multiplayer that you could just... Imagine jumping on 12 of your mates all online, and you can just have, like, a free-for-all tag and race thing. Like,
Well, even just like the open world. So something that they sort of brought into Jet Set Radio Future was that all of the areas were connected. And once you'd sort of beaten a few of the intro levels... You could just roll around and just be like, yeah, cool, I'm now in this place. And they were all, like, you could just find, like, a pathway into another part of the city.
yeah.
And you could just, like, cruise around and, like, practice your lines and all that sort of stuff. Now, if you take that and you think of, like, large open worlds of what they've got the capacity for now, and, things like your Miiverse and stuff like that, like, you see how, like, all the cool little, like, drawings and stuff like that
Oh,
that
yeah,
people do
the
on
creativity is incredible.
Yeah, like, if you were to funnel that, or channel that, I should say, into custom tags and things like that. I mean, obviously there's going to have to be some moderation because people like to draw dicks everywhere. You know how it is.
Dixon Herald Sun.
Yeah, but I mean, again,
Best Facebook friends.
but basically, I mean, you could have like your custom Mario tag that you've drawn. That I like the art style of Mario Strikers, so I'm going to draw me a Mario kicking a metal soccer. Yeah,
As
like
you should, because they're fantastic.
because it was amazing. Like that game looked really cool. And again, I think that this does have. I would personally say it has a place on the Nintendo platform. That's my personal opinion, purely because A, they give things a go like that, but also because their fan base knows what they're getting. They're getting quality. They're getting stuff that you can look at and just be like, that's nice. It doesn't have the 1080p, a million polygons.
60 frames and all
yeah,
that
it doesn't need all of
bullshit.
that. Yeah, it doesn't need all that graphics whole business. It looks nice because it looks nice. It's pretty to look at because it's like
Again,
looking
it's
at
down to their style rather than...
exactly. It's not a matter of style over substance or anything like that. It's a matter of this is the best way to exemplify this. Like you wouldn't expect to see like an anime, like a Dragon Ball game. You would not expect them to do anything other than cell shading because it's what is most faithful to the series.
Yeah.
Like, could you imagine a realistic looking Dragon Ball? And obviously we'll overlook Evolution because that's garbage. But yeah, sorry.
That's alright.
Yeah.
Vomit.
Allergies, yeah. But I mean, you see what I'm saying? Like,
shit.
they can make they can make things in games now that look like you've got your Silicon Valley business, right? Like they're closing the gap between what we can visually put into games and what we see.
Yeah.
Right. I don't think everything needs to be like that.
Yeah, agreed.
And, I mean, look at Sunset Overdrive. Like, people went wild about the design of that. Like,
Oh, it was
just the look
fantastic.
of that game.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the
And
explosions.
it's a shame that it didn't get the sales that it perhaps
Oh,
deserved either.
for
Not
me-
that it matters.
For me,
ultimately,
it's
but-
like that game's. It's best of the generation at the moment for me. Obviously, there's been other games that have done other things and so on and so forth. But for me, purely because it channels all of that, like that Jet Set Radio, that comic book, that like punk rock, all of that shit that I really love. It's like
all there.
That's its blood. Like it's all there. And that's what I'm saying. There's room for more of that. I mean, how much graffiti is there in games these days? None.
No.
Street art is fantastic. Like, you see tourists going around like Melbourne
Taking
streets
photos of-
and taking photos of street art.
Yeah,
And people do that around the world.
Yeah, I mean, like that was something John Safran was tapping on the other day. He goes, "Isn't it amazing how
Not to date
it's
this.
no longer becoming about tagging? It's more becoming about art. Like it's an actual art form now." And I
I
think
mean,
that's
it's
what
been
the
that way
game-
for a while, but now it's been like you could argue tattoos as well.
Yeah.
It's people are getting to that point where
Send a tattoo.
they're actually able to take that in and they're able to say, look, this is art first, and defamation of skin or public vandalism second. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they're putting that stuff well and truly on the back burner.
Yeah.
I mean, there are still people who are like,
Oh, look, there's still your stupid teens who do the wrong thing. And...
oh, absolutely, but I mean, you could say that about anything.
Yeah, oh, it stands for everything, don't yeah, that's what
Yeah,
it was
like that's the same with any industry, anything ever.
How dare you talk about stupid teens like that? Paul?
Yeah.
I've got some that I've been like thinking about ever since like I a new announcement for a game came out the other day, Fallout 4. Oh, amazing. How'd you feel about like the radio guy there?
I
Like,
haven't seen the trailer.
Oh no, the radio guy in like Jet Set.
Jet Set.
Like the cool like just the way he talks. I felt like Fallout 3 almost paid homage to him with 3 Dog. Like I just felt like
okay.
there's a huge like little section there, like it's like as in
I suppose.
this
Look,
guy is just like. I mean, maybe it's just like a general funk kind of a thing that's going on. But
I mean, but they're both pirate radio, though, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I absolutely, and like, aside from the fact that like just pirate radio stations are rad as fuck, like,
Yeah.
like just the concept of being like,
Hijacking the radio.
I'm just gonna, like I'm gonna take over your system and now it's mine and eat dicks. I'm gonna play whatever I like, and that's what it is. Like it's like, and in Jet Set Radio, the game is all about like. He's crashing the airwaves and he's telling people what's actually going on, and he's getting people to question the system and all that sort of stuff. So it does have that same sort of, look around you and actually question what you're talking about. So yeah, I didn't play enough of Fallout 3 to really listen to any of the radios. I was too busy like watching cities blow up and doing the wrong...
And vatsing and...
Yeah, and doing too much of the wrong thing and killing all of the quest givers and just doing
It's fun.
Yeah, because it's fun. Like, because that's how.
But anyway,
that's how I roll. But yes,
I
I have heard some of the dialogue and some of the interactions with that character, and yeah, and that's the thing. Like having enigmatic people that both sort of narrate the game, but are also like they're their own thing that is detached from your characters and what your characters are doing. Because I mean, it's kind of like in. They do it in Saints Row. I'm pretty sure they do it in Grand Theft Auto as well, where you will do things in the world as part of the story, and then you'll hear like radio broadcasts of like, oh, this bank was knocked over because what? Banks were knocked over. Or
because Trevor.
Yeah, because Trevor. Or, breaking news, 747, plowed into a park today for whatever reason.
Because Trevor.
Because Trevor, yeah. And that's the thing. Like it's detached from you, but it's also giving you updates on like, oh, here's how people are responding to the things that you've done. So look, I'm obviously not going to say that they've taken that from Jet Set Radio. They've taken that from the world's media.
Yeah.
But I do think that things like that and having
There's
someone
that.
Yeah, absolutely. Having a character that's like
Having an impact.
Yeah, and it's like they're feeding you the truth in a world that is oppressive. And you've had games like Mirror's Edge and stuff like that do oppressive environments, but you don't really have that sort of shining light of just rebellion. You yourself are supposed to be that shining light. And don't get me wrong, I love Mirror's Edge, but there was no real rebellion against the system. You were just doing your thing and trying to find out why things were bad. You weren't just being like, fuck your system, I'm going to do what I feel like.
Yeah.
And that's for me like a bit better or not better, but it's more appealing for me. And that's why I think Professor K, as dumb as he looks and as dumb as he's like half the shit he says is, I think he's rad as hell.
Yeah, he is pretty awesome.
All right, well, I guess that's the end of another BGU Video Games podcast. Thanks for listening, watching. Feel free to, I hate myself for doing this, like, sharing, subscribing, all that sort
Like,
of
comment,
jazz.
subscribe.
And
And if you didn't,
We
like,
hate-
comment, and subscribe anyway.
now's the time.
Yep. Get
Um,
on board while the getting's good.
Apologies for the dog making a ruckus there, but we'll make sure that she's not present for next time around.
Yeah.
And we'll
You were almost
we'll see.
hesitant on that.
We'll see you next time.
How do I word this so I'm not going to sound like an evil person?
I'm just gonna put it down.
Yeah.
And on that really highbrow, slightly sobering note, we'll see you next time. Thanks for that.
Peace.
Bye.
Oh wait, is that what we were saying?
Ah, shit, that was good as Braz.
So I'll be able
Put in some gameplay stuff.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to do. So
And then you know what I'd like you to do if you can